Hello. Today's video, I'm not going to lie to you, today's video actually is a really hard one for me to shoot. And in fact, I've been debating with myself whether or not I was going to give the full truth of what I saw. And the reason why is because the story that I have to tell and what I see is pretty horrific. But I need to give you, before I go into that, I need to give you a little bit of a backstory. So I belong to a spiritual organization that is sponsored by one of my dear friends and colleagues, Joni Patry, called Shooting Stars. You guys have probably heard of it. Anyway, we meet once a week, and it is a group of spiritual people, spiritual seekers, and also light workers. And we will pull images for the week, and they are images that give us a message of what we feel Spirit wants us to work on for the week. And then we back it up by looking at the astrology. So I joined this organization back, or this group actually, back in, let's say, I think it was August of last year. And every week that we get together, we usually have images of children. And I keep mentioning about protecting the children, and how they need to be protected. And the astrology usually has some indication about children in it as well. And it's got to the point where I say this every week, and I think they're getting kind of tired of hearing me talk about it. But anyway, about a month ago, we had an image that came up, and it was a picture of a child behind a barbed wire. And the child was not frowning. In fact, the child was happy. He was smiling. And I said, you know, that indicates to me that the children need to be protected, and they are being protected behind this barbed wire. And that is the reason why he's smiling and not frowning or crying, because he's happy. He's behind that barbed wire. And so Joni said to me, she goes, Michelle, for somebody who doesn't have any children, you're always talking about the children. You're all about the children. And, you know, we just kind of laughed it off. And I started thinking about that. And actually, she's right, because I got the opportunity to travel to India a few years ago, many times. And this is when I was really pursuing the studies of Vedic astrology, as well as Ayurveda and yoga, because I'm a certified yoga teacher as well, and I have studied Ayurveda. And I had the privilege of going and seeing a Nadi astrologer. Now, the Nadi astrologers in India are the astrologers who read palm leaves. And these palm leaves were written hundreds and hundreds of years ago by some seers and they are actually people's horoscopes. And they cognized this, this information was downloaded to these different Nadi astrologers hundreds of years ago. And the scribes at the time wrote them down on palm leaves. And then the palm leaves are stored in the special areas in the north. So there's 4 Nadi readers, and they're in each direction. So you have north Nadi readers, south Nadi readers, east and west Nadi readers. And you will be kind of driven to go to the Nadi reader that has your horoscope. And the interesting thing is that the Nadi reader that I had read my horoscope, and he said that the reason why I don't have children is because it's my karma to take care of other people's children. And that made a lot of sense to me, because actually that's what I've been doing my whole entire life. But I don't want to digress and get into that. So the point I'm trying to make is that Joni was right when she said that. Even though I don't have children, I am all about taking care of those precious beings and being an advocate for them. And so this was one of the reasons why I had a hard time when it came for me to shoot this video, because I saw something. And I started realizing that if I don't speak out about it, then it's not going to come to light. The more people, it's starting to come to light, but the more people who speak out about it, the more it can come to light and the more it can be rectified and something can be done about it. And I'm not helping anybody. I'm not doing anybody a service, especially the children, by keeping my mouth shut and not saying what I'm seeing. So the thing that started bothering me was actually after I shot the video for this, the full moon that happened on July 3rd of this year, 2023. And I did see that it was uncovering the fact that the people in power, our leadership, was covering up some scandals involving money in foreign countries. And also the media was covering up what was going on with our world leaders involving that. Special media people, the mainstream media. And so that was there. But then after I shot the video, I started thinking about this chart about 2 days later. And I was thinking, you know what? There's something else that's hidden. And it was bothering me. And the part of the chart that was bothering me was this house right here, which from the full moon is actually the 10th house. And the 10th house is our government. But when you look at this house from the moon, the full moon here, which actually represents, which is in the first house of the United States chart, Sagittarius, this house becomes the 5th house from the full moon. And the 5th house is all about children. So I started thinking about this. I'm like, what's up with this? There is a story here. There's something that's got to be told. Well, the ruler of the 5th house is Mars, and Mars for this chart, looking at it from the moon, is also the ruler of the 12th house, and Mars deposits to here, which is Leo, which is our leaders. And this is the 9th house of the full moon chart. And the 9th house represents truth, but truth's not being told. Why? And Mars is in the nakshatra of Magha, which is our rulers and our leaders. The leaders aren't telling the truth because the ruler of Leo is Sun, the Sun, which goes up here to Gemini, and it is with Mercury, and it's the 12th house of the new moon chart. 12th house here, there's the ascendant. Cancer was the ascendant for that new moon. In the 12th house, they're not telling the truth. They're covering it up. And Saturn, Sun, and Mercury are in the nakshatra of Ardra, and Ardra is the teardrop. It is sadness. And so here we have sadness, and something is going on behind the scenes that is very sad. So what is it? It's the tears of our children that are being trafficked. And Mercury also represents travel as well as communications. So the media is covering it up. You don't hear much about it. And Mercury also represents the youth. The children are crying. They need to be protected. And I just started thinking about that, and I just thought, oh my goodness, this is, I didn't know, to tell you the honest God truth. The reason why it didn't really dawn on me prior to that is because I'd heard of human trafficking, but I never really knew much about it. And so that's why it didn't hit my radar when I saw this chart the first time. Because actually it started to hit my radar a little bit after that because of a Shooting Stars, another Shooting Stars meeting that we had. And some of the people there had mentioned that a movie was coming out regarding human trafficking and the trafficking of children for sex, but also the harvesting of organs. If sex is not enough, then the harvesting of organs is just horrendous as well. So, and I think I probably didn't want to look at it because it's so horrific. And when I think about it now, I want to throw up. Just makes my stomach turn over. But that's what this was showing. Also, the government was covering it up. You don't hear about that. You do not hear about the trafficking, human trafficking, from our government, from our administration, or from the media, and how prevalent it has become, especially with the open borders and what our current administration is doing, leaving our borders open, wanting the borders to be open. Not only does it bring in the fentanyl, which is killing hundreds and thousands of people, but the part they don't talk about is the child trafficking and how serious that has gotten. And I still didn't quite get it until this Saturday when I was taking my own advice, because I told y'all to stop listening to the mainstream media news because you're not getting the full story. It's politicized. You need to go and do your own research. So I was online doing my own research, looking into this, into different things. I just wanted to see what was happening in the news, right? Not necessarily that. But what ended up serendipitously coming to my attention was the movie that had just gotten released on July 4th that did not get much press until it became a box office hit. And now you hear a little bit more about it. But that movie is called The Sound of Freedom, The Truth of Human Trafficking. And they were interviewing, and it's produced by Angel Studios. And I managed to see a YouTube video of them interviewing Tim Ballard and the producers of the movie, as well as the actor who played Tim Ballard in the movie. And this is a true story about Tim Ballard, who is a former Department of Homeland Security officer. And what he does is he goes in and into war-ridden countries or wherever he can, and he's rescuing these children and saving them from child trafficking, the sex trade. And that is what this is. And this movie, thank heavens, is really bringing light to the seriousness of what's behind the scenes, what the news media and our administration is covering up. So that opened up my eyes. And it is awakening the masses to this horrific problem. And what's happening here is the fifth house from the moon of this chart. Jupiter is the indicator of children here with Uranus. Uranus is the great awakener. So we are finally waking up to the issue of child trafficking. And it is with Rahu as well. And I know Rahu expands things. We've been talking about that. But Rahu is also toxic people, cads, people who are doing criminals. It's also that. So we have this conjunction here, these three planets here in the fifth house of children. So we are wakening up to the cartel, the bullies, what's going on, the people who are preying on our children, and they're taking advantage of these children who do not have homes. Tim Ballard went into the Ukraine, and we all know that the Ukraine right now is being destroyed. They're in war with Russia. He was brave enough to go into the Ukraine, and he rescued 6,000 children from there, because that's where the people who want to kidnap these kids go. They go to places where there is war or a natural disaster, and these children have lost their families, they've lost their parents, and so they have no family, no home, nobody to go to, and they are victims of these types of people who kidnap them and sell them into human trafficking for slavery and sex crimes, pedophilia. So that's there. That's being revealed. And this is what this chart was trying to tell us, that this movie, and because the 12th house here is film and TV, as well as things that are hidden, but it's film. So a film was being released about, because of this deposit, this triangle right here, the child trafficking. And Mars is the 12th house from the moon, full moon, which is also, again, film. So we're getting it again. So there you are. So this is coming out, and this is something that needs to be said, and people need to wake up to it. And the more people who know about it, that's the reason why I decided to go ahead and do this video about this movie and about this is to help bring awareness to this issue because it is really bad. And so you don't need to take my word for it. I say do your own research. Go online and do your own research. But I'm not saying by going online to go to Facebook or any of those social media platforms like that to get the information, because you're not going to get true information on those platforms. They are run by AI. AI figures out what you're interested in and then will target news, and it's fake news because AI lies. That's another video. Will target what it thinks you're interested in, and that's all you'll get. So you're not getting the true story. Go online and look for videos where people are interviewing the actual players. So this is a video that I saw, and actually the group that put it together was called The Daily Signal, interviewing, like I said, Tim Ballard, the producers of the movie and the actor, and then there were other people, other video stations, channels that interviewed him as well. And so I got more and more information as it's coming straight from the horse's mouth. Then I took the information that he was saying and I did my research and uncovered some things myself on my own to validate what he's saying. And one thing that he did point out when he was in the Ukraine, what he uncovered was this group called the PNVD Party. Now, the PNVD Party is a pedophile group, and they were based out of Holland, and they kind of got shut down, but they do surface. And so I did my own research on this group, and what it stands for absolutely made me sick. It stands for Love and Diversity to Accept and Legalize Pedophilia, is what it is. They want sex education to be taught to kindergartners. They want children as young as the age of 12 to be able to make adult decisions about themselves, to consent. Because if the children are consenting to having sex, then supposedly it's not illegal or immoral. And there are some other things. But this sounds an awful lot like a movement that our administration right now, our current administration, has been backing, and that's called the woke movement. But don't just take my word for it. Go and do your own research and make that decision for yourself. But get informed, get the knowledge, and become aware of what is really going on behind the scenes. And so we have to ask, why does this administration keep encouraging or ignoring the problems that are happening at the borders? Why do they want the borders to stay wide open when all this is going on? This is a question that you need to ask and find the answers for yourself. And when you do, you will discover the truth of what's really happening. But it is time for people to wake up, Uranus, the Great Awakener, and look at all this. And the other thing I found out as I did my research is that people were coming forward, some news organizations and some religious people, and they were criticizing Tim Ballard and what he was doing. And all I got to say is that if anybody's going to criticize somebody who goes out and risks his life, even though he has a family and he has kids that he's supporting, he puts his life on the line to go in war-ridden countries to rescue these children who are being victimized and becoming prey to the cartels, to the evil forces. What does it say about you? What does it say about you? The other thing I want to point out is that I did the Vedic New Year for 2023. And in the Vedic New Year, I talked about how this is going to be a year where we're seeing the forces, the fight between the light and the dark. And that is exactly what this is. This is a fight between light and evil, good and evil. But the light always wins. Just remember that. The light will always win. And how does it win? By more and more people becoming informed and speaking out about it and demanding change. And that's going to happen because we're going to start looking at the next chart, which is actually going to be the new moon. But we have the nakshatra of Kritika, which is where Uranus is. And Kritika is all about speaking up and protecting the children. And people are waking finally to that's what needs to be done. And they are also going to demand that we keep our freedom of speech. And so you have to ask, why do people want to allow censorship to go on in this country where we have freedom of speech? And the reason why we have freedom of speech is so that the truth can come out. And you have to ask yourself, why does the government want to censor us? Why does the social media want to censor us? And you know what? It's illegal. Censorship is plain out illegal and also immoral because it's not allowing the truth to come out. So we have to have our freedom of speech. But anyway, I digress because I just want to say to the critics of Tim Ballard and anybody else who puts their life on the line, risk their life to save our children, to save our nation, to make sure that we have safe streets and safe cities where we can go and walk down the street and not have to worry about if we're going to be mugged or murdered or robbed or whatever. This is what I have to say. If you are not in the arena getting your ass kicked on occasion, I am not interested in or open to your feedback. There are a million cheap seats in the world today filled with people who will never be brave with their own lives, but will spend every ounce of energy they have hurling advice and judgment of those of us trying to dare greatly. Their only contributions are criticism, cynicism, and fear-mongering. If you are criticizing from a place where you are not also putting yourself on the line, I'm not interested in your feedback. And that is a quote from Brene Brown, and that was what I read that made me realize I have got to just get the courage and stand up and say what I see in the charts. So I want to quote, I know I'm full of quotes today, but anyway, I'm trying to give a positive twist to what's going on. So this is a quote from Theodore Roosevelt. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly. So there you have that. Okay, so let's look at this new moon chart that is actually going to happen on July 17th, and that's Monday. So we have here the ascendant, which is Libra, and you've heard me talk about Libra being the sign of justice because it's represented by the scale. So that's the sign of justice, truth and justice. And that is the ascendant for this new moon. And the ascendant actually is at 12 degrees, 56 minutes of Swati. And Swati is all about the winds that blow, that purify. So we're getting purified. But Ketu is there. And Ketu is in the nakshatra of Chitra. And Chitra is the great deceiver. That's one of its qualities, is the great deceiver. So this is the ascendant. This is a rising sign. So it's talking about great deceivers. And the depositor of that is Venus, is ruled by Venus, which also rules the 8th house. And the 8th house is scandals and deceit and things that are lying behind the scenes. And it is going over here to Leo, where it is joined by Mars, which is the ruler of the second house and the seventh house in this chart. And as you can see in this chart now, all of a sudden, this house that I was talking about, that bothered me in that full moon chart, is the seventh house. So that means it's opposite of this, and it's opposite the ascendant, and it's aspecting the ascendant. And it happens to be the fifth house of the United States chart. So keep in mind, this is about children. And the ruler of it, so we've got Jupiter, which is the Karaka children, with Rahu in Ashwini. And Ashwini is the travelers. You travel quickly. And Jupiter is in Bharani, which means deaths, but new beginnings. And Aries is all about new beginnings. That's that house there. And Uranus in Kritika, again, the great awakener, what's going on with our children. The second house, our voice, our speech, being deposited here to the 11th house with Venus, ruler of the chart, and the 8th house, which is scandals, in the 11th house. The 11th house is the groups in the masses. And we have been lied to, and we're not going to stand for that anymore. Depositing to the 11th house, the ruler of the 11th house now goes to the 10th house, which is the ruler of the 11th house is the sun, which goes now to the 10th house. And it is in the nakshatra of Purnivasu. And it is with the moon, obviously, because it's a new moon. And they both are in Purnivasu. So our leaders, sun is representing our leaders. It also represents our soul. And the moon is our mind and our emotions. And the moon is in its own sign. It's ruled by Cancer. That's Cancer. It's in its own sign. But in Purnivasu. And Purnivasu is all about return to the light. So by this movie about the children coming out and becoming so popular, people are starting to waken up. It is educating people as to what is really going on behind the scenes. And because people are waking up to what's really going on behind the scenes, something can be done about it. And like I said in some previous videos, when we're going through all of this, it's an opportunity for us to return back to the light. So people who are truthful and courageous and upstanding citizens have the opportunity to come forth because the masses are ready to listen. They're tired of what's going on. They're going to listen. And it is also there with Mercury. Now, Mercury from this chart is the ruler of the ninth, justice, our laws, and the ruler, and that's also that's immigration. And the ruler of the 12th, which, like I said, is things that are hidden behind the scenes, secrets, going here into the 10th house of our government in the nakshatra of Ashwini. Ashwini is all about getting to the bottom of things. It is about therapy. We've been seeing a lot of mental illness here, with Saturn being in Shatabhishak. Pedophiles are mentally ill. And we have a drug epidemic. Mental illness is a real problem that needs to be handled. And that is what Saturn retrograde in Shatabhishak is all about. The addictions, mental illness. But 100 healers. So there is hope there that this will be healed. And this also, what is this? The fifth house of this chart. The fifth house of this chart. And Saturn is the ruler of this house, which is Aquarius, in Shatabhishak. And this fifth of Saturn aspects the seventh house here. So having to do with children, aspecting that, this becomes a point of manifestation, the seventh house, going, and Saturn also, and Jupiter and Rahu aspect this house here, the 11th house of the masses. And as you can see, Saturn and Mars, Saturn's aspecting Mars, which is kind of a frustrating type of aspect. There's a lot of setbacks and delays, but it makes you stronger because you are able to overcome your obstacles and your delays. And so that's what I see happening. And Saturn is also aspecting Venus. And they are in the nakshatra, like I said, of Magha, which means they're leaders. I really feel that this is a new beginning for some powerful leaders to come, some new powerful leaders to come forth. That's what I'm seeing there. So there is hope because of the dark side being exposed. Now the light can come forth. And I see with this chart, that's starting to happen. Yeah. So, and the other thing too is that we are, for this chart, it's running the Jupiter-Mars dasha, which means that Jupiter and Mars become the most important planets of this chart. And Jupiter is in the 7th house, ruler of the 6th and the 3rd. The 6th is our enemies, it's obstacles and delays. The 3rd house is communications, and it's also travel. Jupiter is a karaka for children. And this house is ruled by Mars, which is the 2nd important planet in this chart, depositing over to the 11th house of the masses. The 11th house is also your final healing. And they are in a 5-9 relationship, which is very auspicious. So out of the darkness does come the light. And I have one more quote. The dark does not destroy the light, it defines it. It's our fear of the dark that casts our joy into the shadows. So all this is nothing to be afraid of. You need to awaken, use your Uranus's power and awaken to what's really going on behind the scenes. Don't be afraid of it. Fear is actually false experiences appearing real. I know I'm full of quotes, but what can I say? So there you have it. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and click all notifications so you don't miss any videos. And check me out at my website, www.michellebond007.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free newsletter so that you will always be informed. And book an appointment so you can see how these planetary energies play out specifically for you. Be inspired, be empowered, and I will see you next week.